You and I talked about this the other day, but I'll ask you again. How much do concepts or just things from private or instrument training
Sure.
do you apply in your life today in a 747?
All of them.
All of it.
With the exception of NDB navigation, but even some of the concepts, honestly, we still talk about it.
All of it.
All of it.
It's just bigger and faster.
That is correct.
That's it.
It's just bigger and faster. It all happens kind of snap, snap. When you're flying at 150 miles an hour, for example, things can be kind of quick.
Right.
But if you're prepared for them, you find yourself kind of waiting.
Because you're so ahead of the airplane.
Exactly.
So you're waiting for the plane to catch up.
Exactly. And when you get to your first jet, it's a very different story. You're hanging on by the static wicks. The airplane's driving and you're just trying to catch up.
It's funny. I was talking with an airline pilot once who was saying something to the effect of, so when we fly, when you learn how to fly in these small piston engine planes,
right,
you really think mostly in terms of distance, like 10 miles out, I'll make my call.
Sure.
It's all distance. But he was talking about, moving up and flying faster and faster planes. And he said at some point, I forget the plane, I think it was a Saab 340 or something, all of a sudden this big leap in speed in terms of plane he was flying.
Uh-huh.
And he said he had to flip it from distance to time.
Yeah.
Because the faster you move up in terms of speed, the more, if you stay in the same distance, it'll bite you in the butt.
Sure. I distinctly remember flying from Anchorage to Los Angeles recently in this 747 some point last year, and we had been given best forward speed by air traffic control because we were leading the pack and we were doing like Mach 0.9 or something.
Crazy.
We looked down and we had quite a tailwind. We're doing 700 knots over the ground.
Oh.
And we're having a good laugh, and then we get kind of toward Portland and we're like, hang on a second. We're only about 700 miles away. And we're doing we need to start planning our descent. And, we're 700 miles away and we need to really get on the ball here because, quite honestly, we were a little bit behind it.
Right.
I mean, we hadn't been. We'd been behind where we had planned to be in terms of our planning for the future. But obviously we weren't behind the airplane. Everything was doing just fine.
Right. And speed, too. I mean, speed accounts if you plan according to time, it also accounts for ground speed. You know what I mean? Because if I begin my XYZ 30 minutes out, then I don't care how fast I'm going. 30 minutes out, it is.
Sure. And for people who are listening and don't know, if you look at your ground speed readout and it says 700 knots, that is it's faster than Mach 1. We're more or less doing the speed of sound over the ground in terms of relative closure to Los Angeles, and things happen pretty quickly. And you're not meant to be going that fast normally in a transport category plane, but we had quite a tailwind, and the 747 is pretty beastly.
Do you remember how long it took you from Portland to LA on that flight-ish?
I do not. No, I remember that we were well into our descent over San Francisco, though.
And that's the other thing. You know what I mean? Like when you learn how to fly, you begin your descent. Like I said, I don't know. 10, 15 miles out, because you're going from 5,500 to like 1,500. It's and you're slow,
exactly,
and you're slow. But to think of arrival procedures, I mean, those arrival procedures, they extend over more than 100 miles.
The track mileage on an arrival procedure, depending on the country and the airport, can be in the 300-mile range.
Absolutely crazy. So you begin your descent over Nevada to land in LA.
Potentially, sure.
You could start it.
Yeah, you absolutely. I can't remember the name of the arrival. I think it might be the river arrival in Los Angeles, but it goes out practically to Phoenix, or at least the transition is somewhere in Arizona, I feel like.
So since we're talking about
Palm Springs, 29 Palms, that's
something
far out, isn't it?
So since we're talking about these concepts of transitioning to faster planes, as you've moved, what'd you learn to fly on? 150?
My first airplane or training airplane was a Tampico by a French company, Aerospatiale. Tampico TB9.
Never heard of it.
Low wing, relatively unstable. They put some sort of guide vanes underneath it because it was pretty bad in a spin. You didn't want to get that thing into a spin.
It wouldn't recover.
Well, we didn't want to find out.
Okay.
So this plane was docile if you kept the shiny side up, but otherwise...
what would be the equivalent? Like, planes that are flying to. Is it still flying that plane?
I don't know, but it's probably like a Cherokee.
Okay. Oh, so
Something
it's a
like
normal,
that.
flight, typical flight training airplane.
Yeah, exactly. Like
Got it.
a Lycoming engine, horizontally opposed, normally aspirated.
Got it.
Very basic.
So at what point, going from that to a 747, did you really have to get your act together in terms of, if I don't do this or shift my thinking, I'll really fall behind the airplanes? On what airplane did that happen? At the regionals?
First jet.
First jet.
First jet. Because I just didn't know what we were doing. I didn't know what the point was. We had 8 simulators. The 8th one was a check ride. And I'd never been in any other kind of cockpit than a twin prop.
So you went from small planes, piston, to a jet.
That's right.
And what was it, the 175, or did that come after?
That was later. Yeah, the first jet I flew was the CRJ 200. And I was clueless, to say the least.
You had no
I didn't know
clue.
what I was supposed to do. I could operate the system. I could operate the aircraft. I didn't know what I was supposed to do. So I was behind it. I was big time behind it. Until I wasn't.
Is that typical for a new FO to just be behind for a little bit?
I'm sure that it is. I'm sure that it is. Because you don't have the experience, you don't have the foresight. If you haven't been in a situation before, you can't accurately imagine what's coming. And so you're constantly reacting to things. And it's fine. You can react to all kinds of things. You're a flight instructor, so you know the drill. You are sort of born to react to things as a flight instructor. On one hand, it's your main job. But on the other hand, your main job is to anticipate.
Right.
And you are completely without that ability when you make your transition to first jet. You just do not know what's coming. You don't know how fast it comes. You can't feel how fast it comes. No matter you can know it, you can't feel it.
Right.
Which means you can't anticipate it.
Right.
So you're constantly reacting to things happening that are happening at 4 times the speed than you're used to. So the whole thing's a little messed up. And until you get used to that cadence and pace, the expectations and following these procedures very tight, you are always behind.